Let's take a moment to step back in time into one of the most shocking evenings in American history. Most people know the headline: Abraham Lincoln was shot at Ford's Theater. The tragedy marked the end of the Civil War era and the loss of the 16th President of the United States. But what many people do not realize is that Lincoln was not the only target that night. On April 14th of 1865, a coordinated plot was underway to eliminate the entire leadership of the United States government in a single night. If it had worked the way that the conspirators intended, the country might have plugged into chaos at the very moment it was trying to rebuild after the Civil War. To understand what happened, we have to step into Washington, D.C. on that spring evening. The war was essentially over. Confederate armies everywhere were collapsing. The city is filled with a strange mix of relief and uncertainty. Crowds celebrate Union victory in the streets. Theaters are open again. Music and conversation spill out into the warm evening air. President Abraham Lincoln decides to attend a play at Ford's Theater that night. The performance is a popular comedy called Our American Cousin. Lincoln arrives with his wife, Mary Todd Lincoln, along with Major Henry Rathbone and Rathbone's fiancée, Clara Harris. Inside the theater, the audience laughs and relaxes. The nation's leader sits in the presidential box above the stage. Few people in the crowd know that a famous actor named John Wilkes Booth is already planning to murder the president. But Booth is not acting alone. He's part of a broader conspiracy. Originally, Booth and his associates had planned to kidnap Lincoln. Their hope was to trade him for Confederate prisoners and revive the falling Confederate cause. But by April of 1865, the war is effectively lost for the South. Booth decides that something more dramatic must be done. He organizes a plan to assassinate 3 men at the very top of the United States government on the same night. The targets are Abraham Lincoln, Secretary of State William H. Seward, and Vice President Andrew Johnson. Booth takes responsibility for Lincoln. Another conspirator, named Lewis Powell, is assigned to kill Seward. A third man named George Atzenrod is supposed to assassinate Vice President Johnson. The attacks are meant to happen at nearly the same time. The hope is that removing all 3 of the leaders at once will throw the government into confusion and possibly give the Confederacy one last chance to recover. But history rarely unfolds according to a neat little plan on paper. Let us leave the theater for a moment and travel across Washington to Lafayette Square. This is where Secretary of State William H. Seward is spending the evening. Unlike Lincoln, Seward is not out enjoying a play. Just days earlier, he had been thrown from a carriage and badly injured. The accident left him with serious facial and jaw injuries. Doctors had placed a rigid metal splint around his jaw and neck to hold the bones in place while they healed. He was in a great deal of pain. So on the night of April 14th, Seward is lying in bed inside his home, recovering from this accident in agony. His family members move quietly through the house. They don't want to wake him up if he happens to be sleeping. A soldier named Sergeant George Robinson has been assigned to guard and assist the injured secretary, and the house feels calm. At about 10 minutes past 10 in the evening, a knock comes from the front door. The man who answers the door is William Bell, Seward's servant. Standing outside is a large stranger who says he's delivering medicine from Seward's doctor. The man insists the medicine must be given to Seward personally, and that he must explain how to take it. Bell hesitates, but the stranger pushes forward anyway and makes his way toward the stairs. This stranger is Lewis Powell. Powell climbs towards the 3rd floor, where Seward's bedroom is located. At the top of the stairs, he encounters Frederick Seward, the secretary's son and assistant in the State Department. Frederick immediately becomes suspicious, as a wise boy. He tells Powell that his father is asleep and that the medicine can wait. At that moment, another voice calls from inside the bedroom. It's Seward's daughter, Fanny. She says that her father is awake. Those words unintentionally reveal the exact location Powell has been searching for. Powell turns as if he is about to leave. Then suddenly he pivots back toward Frederick Seward. He raises a revolver and pulls the trigger. And the gun misfires. Instead of firing a single shot, Powell smashes Frederick in the head with a pistol, beating him until he collapses, unconscious. William Bell runs outside, shouting for help. Inside the house, chaos absolutely erupts. Fanny Seward opens the bedroom door just as Powell forces his way inside. William Seward is lying in bed, unable to defend himself. Powell draws a large Bowie knife and attacks. He slashes at Seward's face and neck with violent force. Blood fills the room as Seward struggles beneath the attacker. Sergeant Robinson rushes in and tries to pull Powell away. Seward's son, Augustus, joins the fight. Both men are stabbed during this struggle, and the fight continues. Another man in the house, a messenger named Emmerich Hansel, encounters Powell as he rushes towards the exit, and he is stabbed in the back. Powell then bursts out of the door, shouting wildly before fleeing into the night. It is a brutal and terrifying scene. But this is where the story takes an astonishing turn. Despite the vicious knife attack, William Seward does not die. The reason is something no one could have predicted. That rigid splint that doctors had placed around Seward's broken jaw and neck from the carriage accident deflected the knife blade during the attack. The splint prevents the knife from cutting deeply enough to reach the jugular vein. Without that piece of medical equipment, Seward likely would have died within seconds. And nearly the same moment this attack is happening, John Wilkes Booth enters the presidential box at Ford's Theater. He fires a single shot into the back of Abraham Lincoln's head. Lincoln collapses in his chair. Booth leaps onto the stage and escapes into the night. Across Washington, the assassination plot is unfolding, but it is already beginning to fall apart. The third conspirator, George, has been assigned to kill Vice President Andrew Johnson at the Kirkwood House Hotel. George rents a room directly above Johnson. He even carries a gun and a knife with him. But the moment comes that he can't go through with it. Instead, he wanders downstairs to the bar, drinks heavily, and eventually abandons the mission entirely. The result is that the conspirators only partially succeeded. Lincoln is mortally wounded and dies the following morning. Seward survives his horrific attack. Vice President Johnson never faced any danger at all. The country wakes the next day to news that feels almost impossible to comprehend. The president is dead. The Secretary of State has been murdered. Nearly. A massive conspiracy has struck the Capitol. In the days that follow, the conspirators are hunted down. Booth is killed during a manhunt. Powell is captured and later executed. Several others connected to the conspiracy face trial. But the events of April 14th remain one of the most dramatic nights in American history. This was not simply an assassination. It was an attempted decapitation of the entire federal government. And yet the success of that plan hinged on details so small, they almost seem unbelievable. One conspirator lost his nerve and got drunk. Another attacker failed because of a medical splint placed around a broken jaw because the man was already in pain. History often feels like it turns on massive forces like wars and elections. But sometimes it turns on a single misfired gun, a moment of hesitation, or a piece of metal holding a wounded man's jaw together. But what part of the story really shocks you the most? Was it the scale of the assassination conspiracy, the brutal attack inside Seward's home, the fact that people don't talk about Seward's attempted murder, or the strange twist that it was simply a medical device from a carriage incident that saved the life of the Secretary of State? Let me know in the comments. I do truly want to know what stood out to you. And if you do enjoy stories like this, make sure you follow my Facebook page and subscribe to the History Happens podcast so you never miss the next episode.